The sound that fucked my head up for good was just water hitting water. Nothing supernatural in that, right? Just a splash in the dark. I keep telling myself that when I wake up at 4 in the morning with my heart trying to punch out of my throat, convinced that if I listen hard enough, I'll hear it again, that same heavy slap and echo of something too big going under. So yeah, I'm the outdoors guy. That's what everyone calls me on campus, half as a compliment, half as a joke. I'm a guy who's always got a backpack in the corner of the lecture hall, who shows up to labs with mud on his shoes and pine needles stuck in his hoodie. I don't go to parties, I go to trailheads. My phone background isn't my girlfriend, it's some stupid ridge line at sunrise. I go to school right where the Appalachians are starting to get serious. Not the pretty tourist overlooks. I mean the dense, wet parts. The parts where the map is just green on green and the contour lines stack so tight they look like fingerprints. It rains all the time. The forest floor never really dries out. There's fog that just lingers in the hollows like it forgot how to rise. If you've never been out here, it's hard to explain how big the woods feel. Not just wide, but deep. It's like standing in front of an ocean made of trees. And the thing about oceans is, there are places no one has ever been. Not really. Not in any way that counts. People around here tell stories. They always have. Light things up near the ridges, voices where there shouldn't be any, things that scream like a person until you get close and then stop. You hear enough of that and it just becomes background noise. Lukal kipti watabe. You joke about it when you're drunk at campfires and then still check your tent zippers twice before you go to sleep. That's the kind of place I decided to decompress after finals. It had been a rough week. Exams back to back, too much caffeine, not enough sleep. My brain felt like someone had wrung it out and left it to dry on the library radiator. I remember walking out of my last test, blinking in the weak afternoon light, and thinking I need trees. I need dark. I need to be somewhere that isn't covered in fluorescent bulbs and white bards. So I went back to the dorm, dumped my backpack on the floor, and started tossing gear on my bed. Headlamp, camp stove, lighter, the little titanium pot with someone's initials scratched in the bottom. Out of habit, I reached for my tent bag and then stopped. I'm not even gonna pitch it, I muttered. I'll just sleep in the car. Lazy, that's all it was. Pure laziness. I had the whole setup. I've done week-long backpacking trips in worse conditions. But that night, the idea of threading poles through sleeves and staking out guy lines felt like putting together IKEA furniture after a 12-hour shift. Where you going this time? My roommate's voice made me jump. I hadn't heard him come in. He leaned against the door, hoodie half-zipped, a bag of chips in one hand, looking at the mess on my bed like I was some animal that had wandered in from the woods. Just out, I said. One-nighter, by the Chattooga. He frowned. You going alone? Yeah. You're a fucking idiot, he said without heat. You know that, right? Thanks, Mom. I'm serious. You hear about that girl who? I'm not that girl. I cut him off, sharper than I meant to. I'm not hitchhiking. I'm sleeping in my car, dude. It's like the safest way to camp. Metal box, locks, heater if I need it. I'll be back tomorrow. He hesitated, like he wanted to push it, then just shrugged and grabbed his headphones off the desk. At least text me where you go, he said. Like, drop a pin when you park. I want to know where to start looking when you don't show up. I rolled my eyes, but I did it. I always do it. Safety habits are like that. You talk shit about people who don't have them. Then one day you realize you've got a whole routine. I should probably tell you about the rules, too. The outdoor club on campus has this bulletin board in the rec center. It's usually just flyers for weekend trips and people trying to sell used gear that smells like mildew. But at the top, pinned crooked under a rusty thumbtack, there's this ugly, faded yellow sheet of paper someone printed years ago. The ink's starting to bleed from the humidity. I've seen it 100 times on my way to borrow a water filter or sign out a bear canister, and I always smirked at it. Unofficial night, camping notes, Chattooga corridor. No logo, no official stump. Just this list of rules in bold, like someone typed it between classes and never edited it. I didn't think about it that afternoon. Not when I grabbed my keys. Not when I slung my sleeping bag into the car. Not when I pulled out of the parking lot at a speed that probably technically counted as reckless. They came back later, just not when they would have been useful. The drive out there takes about an hour if you're respecting speed limits. I wasn't. The sky had already gone that flat, steel color it gets before rain, and I wanted to be at the fire ring before total dark. The main roads thinned out fast. Gas stations, then houses, then just the occasional mailbox. Asphalt gave way to patched concrete, then to old buckled blacktop. My Spotify kept dropping out between songs, then finally gave up and hung there, spinning. I killed it and cracked the window instead. Cold air slapped my face, wet and sharp, carrying that mossy, earthy smell that tells you you're getting close to water. There's this point, maybe 10 minutes before the turnoff, where everything changes. You crest a little ridge, and it's like someone shut a door behind you. No more houses, no more porch lights, just trees pressing in close to the road. The yellow lines down the middle look almost fluorescent against the asphalt because there's nothing else that bright. That's where I realized how alone I was. I hadn't passed another car in a while, and there wasn't any traffic behind me. My headlights speared forward into this tunnel of bare branches and rhododendron thickets. The ditches on either side were full of brown water and slick leaves. It felt sealed, like the world ended right behind my taillights and never existed in front of my hood until I rolled into it. I checked my phone signal. 1 bar. Then it blinked out. I told myself that was a good thing. That was the point, right? Get away. Get quiet. Leave the Wi-Fi and Canvas notifications behind for one fucking night. Still, my fingers squeezed the steering wheel a little tighter. The turnoff is easy to miss if you don't know it. Just this narrow gravel road yawning off to the right, marked by a small brown Forest Service sign someone halfway shot up years ago. I almost blew past it and had to brake harder than I should have, tires spitting gravel, before I cranked the wheel and nosed the car into the trees. Instant darkness swallowed me. The canopy here closed over the road in a long, sagging arch. Even in winter, with most of the leaves down, the branches knit together enough to block what was left of the sky. My headlights lit up damp trunks and slick rock outcrops, the light bouncing off patches of standing water in the ruts. My tires crunched over washboard and potholes. The car rattled and groaned. The gravel road wound down toward the river in tight curves that made my headlights slide across the undergrowth like someone sweeping a flashlight. That's when the first weird feeling hit. Nothing dramatic, just this tightening. A pinch low in my stomach, like when you realize you forgot to send an important email. My shoulders crept up toward my ears. I rolled my neck, trying to shake it out. Knock it off. I muttered to myself. You want a remote. This is remote. It's just trees. The Chattooga runs along the bottom of a steep, forested slope here. The road parallels it, just inland. There are these little pull-offs every so often where the Forest Service half-fastly improved old logging landings. An ugly rock fire ring, some bare dirt sprinkled with bottle caps and cigarette butts. Dispersed camping, they call it, which is a romantic way of saying, we won't arrest you if you park here, but don't expect a bathroom. I'd been to this stretch once in daylight with some friends, but never at night and never alone. I remembered one of the turnouts near the very end of the road being a little wider, though, with a clear path down to the water. That's where I aimed. On my way in, I passed the tiny gravel lot they call a trailhead, just enough space for 2 cars and a bulletin board. My headlights flashed over it, and something caught my eye, a rectangle of yellow paper curling at the edges, pinned under a sheet of scratched plexiglass. That stupid list from the rec center. I didn't stop. I didn't get out to read it. I just saw the font and the words Night Camping Notes, Chattooga, in my beams for half a second as I bumped past and thought, guess they posted it here too. I should have stopped. I think about that so much it feels like a bruise on my brain. Instead, I kept going, following the road as it hugged the slope. The forest got thicker, the underbrush climbing higher, hemming me in. Once or twice the river appeared through the trees, a slick smear of darker dark that flashed back my headlights and then slipped away. The further I went, the more that tightness in my gut climbed. It crawled up into my chest, making my breaths come shorter. There was no reason for it. Nothing had happened, but my body started acting like something was about to. I rounded one last bend, and the road dead-ended in the spot I remembered. It wasn't much, just a widened gravel circle and a little drop-off where the trees opened up enough that I could hear the river more clearly, a soft roar under everything else. I put the car in park and killed the engine. Silence dropped in like a weight. No more tires on gravel, no more heater fan, no more engine ticking. Just a muffled rush of water somewhere below and the tiny pinging sound of the car's hot metal settling in the cold air. The sudden stillness made my ears ring. I sat there for a second with my hands still on the wheel, breathing, staring into the space my headlights carved out. The beams lit up the edge of the gravel, then just nothing. Inky black beyond the first few trunks. The forest swallowed the light like it was hungry. I told myself I was being dramatic. I forced my fingers to unclench, grabbed my headlamp from the cup holder, and shoved the door open. Cold slapped me again, stronger this time without the glass. It smelled like wet leaves, mud, and something faintly metallic from the river. My breath puffed in front of me as I clipped the headlamp around my beanie and clicked it on. The beam cut a narrow path through the dark. That's when the anxious feeling in my gut went from nerves to wrong. It was like my body, stepping out of the car, tripped something in the woods. The hair on my arms rose. The back of my neck prickled. Nothing moved, nothing made a sound, but suddenly every instinct in me was screaming, "Get back in, get back in, get back in." Have you ever had that? That full body alarm with no clear source? It's not Hollywood. There's no ominous chord. No CGI shadow darting between trees. It's just you, standing there like an idiot, holding a camp chair, feeling your stomach clench as if it's trying to shrink away from your spine. I ignored it, because that's what you do when you're the outdoors guy, and you've spent years puffing your chest out about how you're not scared of the dark. You tell yourself it's just leftover exam stress. Too much coffee, not enough sleep. You tell yourself you've been in scarier places. Rule 1, I said out loud, mimicking the dumb she on the bulletin board, trying to shake off the feeling with humor. Always trust your gut, unless your gut is being a little bitch. My breath steamed in the beam of my headlamp as I walked around the car to the back. The ground sucked at my boots, damp gravel and mud. I popped the hatch and started grabbing things. Chair, small cooler, a bundle of split what I bought from a guy on the side of the road. Every move felt too loud in the stillness. The river was a darker smear just off to my right and down. I couldn't quite see it from the road, just the suggestion of motion. The sound carried up, hollow and constant. It made a low, throaty noise, almost like a voice 2 rooms over. I flicked the headlamp toward the edge and saw the path. A narrow, trampled strip leading down through the underbrush, slick with wet leaves. Beside it, closer to the car, the remains of someone else's campsite sprawled like the aftermath of a party. There were shredded beer boxes, crushed cans, a melted plastic fork still half stuck in dirt. And off a little ways, at the very edge of my beam, something that didn't quite register at first. 2 old camp chairs, or what was left of them. Just charred metal frames poking up out of a blackened circle where someone had burned them right in the fire pit. The nylon had dripped down like wax and hardened. The arms were twisted, one folded over like a broken elbow. And in front of that, in a patch of bare dirt, there was a hole, perfectly round, maybe 8 inches across. Someone had dug it clean, scraping down to pale subsoil. Around the rim, stuck into the ground like hour markings on a clock, were bits of wood. Not just random sticks. They were all roughly the same length, whittled at one end into these crude horn shapes and jammed in at an angle, so they leaned inward over the hole. I stared at it for a couple seconds, my breath loud in my own ears. The headlamp made the little horn sticks throw thin, sharp shadows that converged in the empty center. A prank, I told myself. Some edgy teenager pagan bullshit. Or maybe someone was bored and high. Still, there was something about the clean circle, about how carefully the sticks were spaced, that made my mouth dry. I stepped closer without meaning to. The dirt around the hole was packed, as if a lot of feet had moved around it. Rain had washed some of the impression away, but not all. I don't know why I did it, but I reached out and touched one of the horn sticks. It felt damp and slightly slick under my fingers, like it had been dipped in something, but when I pulled my hand back and sniffed, I didn't smell anything. Just wet wood and ash. A little voice in my head whispered, "Don't break it." I couldn't tell if that voice was mine or not. I backed away, rubbing my thumb against my palm to get rid of the sensation, and forced myself to focus on the simple, normal task of making camp. Fire makes things better. That's a rule that's actually true. I grabbed my lighter, knelt by the ring someone had made out of rocks, and started building a small stack of kindling and split wood. My hands knew what to do. Muscle memory took over. Dry leaves under, twigs on top, then the bigger pieces. The ritual calmed me a little. When I flicked the lighter and touched flame to the leaves, they caught fast, crackling. A little flame flared up, then grew as the twigs ignited. Shadows leapt around me, the trees stuttering in and out of view. Smoke curled up, sharp and comforting. As soon as the fire got going, the oppressive feeling backed off a notch. Not gone, but pushed to the edges. Like the light had carved out a small bubble of okayness around me. I could breathe again. I set my chair a comfortable distance away. I pulled my book out of the car and sank into the fabric, boots planted in the gravel, the fire warming my shins. The river muttered below, the flames popped, and for a minute, it was exactly what I'd come for. Simple, quiet, my brain finally allowed to do nothing. Maybe 30 seconds later, if that, I heard the first splash. You know how your brain has to file new sounds? Like it grabs the noise, flips through a mental Rolodex, and tries to match it to something familiar? That's what happened. My head jerked up. The book slipped down in my lap, forgotten. The sound had come from my right, from the river, but it wasn't the normal, constant background rushing I'd been tuning out. It was distinct, singular. If you can imagine someone throwing a cinder block into deep water, that's the closest I can get. A heavy whump, then a spray, then the delayed slap of disturbed water hitting rock and shore. Enough force that I felt it in my chest, a little like pressure. My first thought was landslide, or a chunk of bank collapsing. It happens. Undercut soil, finally giving up and dropping into the current. I leaned forward in my chair, squinting toward where I thought the sound had come from. But the firelight didn't reach. Beyond the immediate circle, everything was just black. My headlamp only made a narrow beam. Okay, I said to myself. Okay, rockfall, whatever. I try to go back to my book. I even brought my eyes down to the page and forced them to track a few sentences. They swam and blurred. My ears had taken over. The river went on rushing like nothing had happened. The forest didn't chime in with any normal noises. No owl, no rustle. My own breathing sounded too loud. I don't know what made me look at my watch. Habit, maybe. Time check. I flicked my wrist up and saw the pale digital numbers glow in the firelight. 9:17. I fixated on them for no good reason. Just something to anchor myself with. I told myself I'd give it a minute. If nothing else happened, cool. If I heard more, maybe I'd what? Move? Drive away? Call someone? 30 seconds later, almost to the heartbeat, the second splash came. Same place, same depth, same weight. Like someone had taken that same invisible rock and dropped it again. That's what did it. Not the noise itself, not the size, the timing, the precision. If you ask me how I know it was 30 seconds, I'd tell you because my eyes were on the watch. Because I watched the seconds tick from 17:30 to 18:00, and right as it clicked over, the sound hit and my brain went no. I was halfway out of the chair before I even knew I'd moved. My book pitched forward and landed in the dirt. My heart slammed, so hard it shook my whole chest. The fire popped, throwing sparks, and I actually flinched away from my own campfire like it had gone hostile. Every horror movie I've ever laughed at flashed through my head in a slurry. All the dumbass who say hello into the dark. I didn't say anything. My mouth wouldn't have worked if I wanted it to. I just stood there, staring at the black tangle of brush and trunks between me and the unseen water, and realized, with this cold clarity, that I was not alone. I couldn't see them. I couldn't hear anything but the aftermath of the splash, the water settling, and my own breathing, but my body knew. Something was down there. Something big enough to throw that weight into the river without grunting, without slipping, without making any other noise. And it knew I was here. The rules slid into my head then, slick and uninvited, like a cold hand sliding under my shirt. Rule 1, don't camp right on the waterline. Rule 2, if you hear one big splash after dark, it's probably a rock. If you hear a second from the same place, within a minute, pack your shit and leave. It's not for you. Rule 3, don't try to see what's making the noise. Rule 4, no fires after midnight. Rule 5, lock your doors, even miles from anyone. I'd laughed at those when I first read them months ago. Stood in front of the rec center board with a buddy, pointing them out. Who even writes this crap? He'd said. What does it's not for you even mean? Probably trying to keep drunk freshmen from swimming. I'd answered, smirking. Don't swim in the dark, or the river ghost will get you. Standing there now, my brain replayed Rule 2 with perfect clarity, like I was the one who'd typed it, and my stomach turned over. I didn't remember grabbing my keys, but suddenly they were in my hand, biting into my palm. My legs moved before the rest of me caught up. 1 second, I was by the chair. The next, I was slamming the back of the car, closed with too much force, and stumbling around to the driver's side. The forest outside the reach of my headlamp was wrong. I keep using that word, but I don't have a better one. It wasn't louder, it wasn't quieter. It just felt like those black spaces between the trees were eyes. Like they'd always been eyes, and I'd only just noticed. My fingers fumbled on the door handle. When I wrenched it open, the dome light flared on, soft and yellow and almost painfully normal. I dove in, dragging the door shut behind me with a hollow thunk, and jammed the lock button down on instinct. That little click sounded weak as hell. Inside the car, my breath fogged the windows fast. My hands shook on the steering wheel. I stared straight ahead through the windshield, at the way my headlights cut across the gravel and into the first rank of trees, and felt like I had just barely made it out of something's reach. I could still hear the river through the glass. A dull, steady roar. I strained to hear anything else, footsteps, a splash, a voice, but there was nothing. Just that noisy silence. At some point, I realized I was still holding my keys in a death grip and forced myself to breathe out. Long, slow. I tried to think. Option 1, start the car and drive the hell out. Rational. Probably what you're screaming at me to do right now. Option 2, assume it really was falling rock, that my brain was overreacting, and go back to the fire like nothing happened. Option 2 didn't feel like an option. Not anymore. I sat there for maybe a minute, listening, my skin crawling, fighting with this weird, stupid disappointment. Like I was a kid whose game got rained out. I'd come out here for peace, for a sort of reset, and less than 10 minutes in, something had already fucked it up. This is so dumb, I whispered to myself. My voice sounded small in the closed space. Just go. Another thought pushed in. The fire. I'd left it burning. Not huge, but alive. Flames licking at the wood. Dry leaves nearby. I've seen what happens when some asshole leaves a campfire burning. I've helped dig shit lines around brush fires before the Forest Service showed up. That habit runs deep. It dug claws in right alongside the fear. You don't leave a fire burning in dry woods. Even if you think something big and wet is waiting for you. You just don't. Fuck, I said. I took 3 quick breaths, grabbed my water jug from the passenger side floor, and forced myself out of the car. The outside, air hit me like a wall. It felt colder. The night seemed thicker, like it had moved in closer while I was inside. I didn't let myself look toward the river. I kept my headlamp fixed low, on my own boots, on the dirt, on the small circle of light between the car and the fire ring. The fire still burned, of course. It hadn't gone anywhere. The flames danced, cheerful, popping as sap boiled in the wood. Smoke curled into the air. My camp chair sat exactly where I left it, one arm slightly in shadow. I stepped up, sloshed water into the pit. Steam hissed up, carrying the sharp smell of hot rock and wet ash. The flames shuddered, dropped, clung for a second, then died, leaving only sullen orange coals. I stirred the mess with a stick until everything looked wet and gray. That was the plan. Fast, efficient, out. My back prickled the whole time. The river, 30 or 40 feet downslope, kept up its low roar. I listened over it, waiting for another impact, for something to move in the underbrush, for the crack of a twig under a wrong kind of weight. Nothing. Just my own heartbeat pounding in my ears and the hiss of steam. The weird hole with the horn sticks was still there at the edge of my vision. I didn't look at it directly. It felt like if I did, it would be closer than before. Like the circle would have moved when I wasn't watching. I know that's stupid. Brains do stupid stuff. As soon as the last coal went dark, I dropped the stick, turned on my heel, and fast walked back to the car. I didn't run. I wanted to. Every muscle in my legs wanted to push off and sprint, but some primitive part of me hissed, don't run. Running makes you pray. I yanked the driver's side door open and slid in, breathing hard. I locked it again like it had somehow unlocked itself. My hands went to the ignition on autopilot. That's when I realized something else was wrong. I could see out the windshield, but everything outside the cone of my headlights wasn't just dark. It was gone. It felt like the world ended at the edge of the light. Like if I stepped beyond it, there would be nothing under my feet. The fire had been a little sun. It pushed the darkness back in a wide ring. Without it, my car's beams felt weak. Narrow. The trees beyond the first few rows looked like cutouts taped against a black sheet. I swallowed, turned the key, and the engine shuddered to life. The vibration under me was a relief. Something mechanical. Something I understood. Gravel crunched as I eased the car forward, turned, and nosed back up the road. My rearview mirror showed only this blank space where the campsite had been. No glow, no smoke, just blackness swallowing up behind me. I told myself I was heading back to the main road, that I was done. But as I drove, bumping over ruts, another thought slipped in. There were other camping spots along this road. One's farther from the river, more open. I'd only been at that first site for 10 minutes? Maybe less. I'd driven all the way out here, burned gas I couldn't really afford, packed my whole kit. All for what? One half-read page of a book and a panic attack? The farther I got from the river's immediate noise, the more that stubborn, stupid part of me kicked in. The anxious grip in my gut loosened a little. I rolled past one small turnout that was basically a ditch, then another. My brights picked out a wider spot a little uphill on the opposite side of the road, the side away from the water. This one was more open to the sky. The tree cover thinned enough that the low clouds showed as a lighter gray overhead. There was no clear path to the river from here, just a steep drop through rocks and brush. The fire ring was smaller, less trashed. No verdaderos, no weirdoles. I pulled in before I could talk myself out of it and put the car in park. When I turned the engine off, the silence fell again, but it didn't feel as heavy. I could still hear the river, but fainter, like a far-off highway instead of a whisper in my ear. The tightness in my gut was still there, but muted, manageable. Okay, I told myself. Second chance. Away from the water. Follow the rules. If anything feels off, you leave. Simple. I got out again, slower this time. The air here didn't feel as thick. My headlamp beam caught the edges of the fire ring, the crushed beer cans, some half-burned logs. I stood there with the hatch open, holding my bundle of wood, listening. The forest watched me. I knew it did, but the immediate sense of being under someone's thumb had eased. I almost left the chair in the car. Some stupid superstition told me that if I didn't get too comfortable, I wouldn't be tempting whatever. But that felt like letting the fear win, so of course I grabbed it. As I sat up, the anxious feelings started creeping back, slow and sneaky. like fog filling in low spots. No big spikes this time, just a gradual climb. Every time I bent down to stack kindling, I felt exposed. Every time I straightened up, I half expected to see someone standing at the tree lean. No one was there, just my own breath and the distant river. I built another small fire. My hands weren't as steady as before, but the motions still calmed me a little. Lighter, spark, tinder catching, flames taking hold. The circle of light ballooned outward, painting the trunks and low branches in flickering orange. I sat, but I didn't open my book again. I just stared into the flames, rubbing my thumb over the face of my watch without looking at it. My ears strained, trying to filter the distant water from everything else. Rule 2 throbbed in my mind. If you hear a second splash within a minute, pack your shit and leave. I argued with the air. Technically, I muttered, that already happened. Down there. This is a different spot. My voice sounded too loud, so I shut up. 5 minutes crept by. I know, because I didn't end up looking at my watch. At some point, I clicked the little light button, and the bluish glow made my face look corpse pale in the reflection of my phone screen. The longer nothing happened, the more ridiculous I felt. Maybe the 2 splashes had been, I don't know, some kind of weird hydraulic thing. Water hitting an undercut in just the right way. Maybe I'd imagine the timing lining up. Memory plays games. The fire popped. A log shifted, sending up a little cascade of sparks. Behind that, from my right down the slope, somewhere toward the river I couldn't see, came a third splash. The exact same sound, the same weight, the same impact. My whole body recognized it before my conscious mind did. My heart lurched like it was trying to dive out of my chest cavity and hide under the car. I shot to my feet so fast the chair tipped backwards and collapsed with a metallic clatter. My water bottle rolled away, bumping into a rock. Everything in me screamed, move. This time, I didn't hesitate. I didn't stand there trying to rationalize shit. I grabbed the nearest things, my bag, my book, my little cooler, and started hurling them into the back of the car, not caring where they landed. The rational, trained part of my brain still tried to work through the panic. Put out the fire, it insisted in my own voice. You do not leave an open flame in the woods. Even if you're freaked, you. Another part of me cut in, hysterical. Fuck the fire, just go. I compromised in the worst possible way. I tried to do both at once. I yanked open the driver's door, dropped my bag in the seat, snatched the water jug from the floor, and spun back toward the fire ring. My boots slipped a little in the damp dirt. The air felt thicker, like walking through a room full of invisible people. Rule 3. Don't try to see what's making the noise. I didn't look downslope. I kept my eyes glued to the coals as I sloshed water over them, the steam rising fast, stinking. My hands shook, splashing more on my jeans than on the wood. This time, I knew the timing. I didn't have to check my watch. The moment that first splash hit my ears, my brain started counting down all on its own, this sick little metronome ticking away in the back of my skull. 27, 28, 29. I bent closer to the fire, desperate to finish. The coals hissed and went black, but I stabbed at them anyway with a long stick, making sure nothing glowed underneath. 30. The second splash hit like a punch. It felt closer, somehow, even though the geography said it couldn't be. The sound rolled up through the trees and over the slope and crawled through my shoes and my legs. It was like the whole hillside flinched. I felt it. That's the part that messes with me. You don't feel a rock hit water from that far away. Not like that. Not in your joints. I straightened so fast my back popped. My headlamp beam swung wildly, catching trunks, branches, empty air. For half a second, I thought I saw something vertical between 2 trees, taller than a person, pale, but when I snapped back for a second look, there was nothing there. My throat made this pathetic, strangled sound. I didn't mean to make it. I dropped the stick and sprinted for the car. This time I did run. Screw whatever prey animal instinct I had. My boots hammered the gravel. The water jug thumped against my leg, sloshing. The breath wheezed out of me in ragged bursts. Behind me, The night stayed quiet. No footsteps, no crashing through brush, no third splash. Somehow that was worse. I yanked the door open, threw myself in, slammed it so hard the whole car shook. I twisted the key. The engine caught with a roar that sounded way too loud in the stillness. For a second, I thought that noise alone would draw whatever was down there up to the road like a magnet. Gravel spit from under my tires as I backed up too fast, wheels skidding, then cranked the wheel and lurched forward. My headlights clawed at the trees as I jerked around the bend, the campsite vanishing in the rear view like it had never been there. I didn't look toward the river again. Not once. Not when the road tilted and the sound of water surged. Not when little glints of reflected light flickered between trunks. I kept my eyes locked on the strip of gravel in front of me and the patch of nothing beyond it. I don't remember breathing. I don't remember thinking in words. Just this animal sense, away, away, away. When I finally hit the main road, the sudden smoothness of the asphalt felt unreal, like I'd driven from one universe into another. I turned toward the nearest state park on autopilot. I knew it was about 45 minutes away in good conditions, and I made it in less than that, I think. My speedometer needle hovered higher than it should have. I only remember one thing from that drive with any clarity. At some point, far enough away that the Chattooga would have been more of a concept than a presence. I turned off my radio and cracked the window. Just a little. And for a second, just one, I thought I heard water slap once heavy somewhere out in the dark. I told myself it was just my tires cutting through standing water, some weird echo off a culvert. I told myself that 3-4 times in a row so I wouldn't turn around and check the back seat like a kid. By the time I saw the reflective green sign for the state park, my knuckles were white on the steering wheel. The big wooden entrance arch loomed up out of nowhere, the kind with a carved bear and the park name routed into it and painted over. The little gatehouse was dark, just a small window and a pay station, self-service after 6 p.m. sign. I pulled into the empty lane, rolled to a stop in front of the feed box, and just sat there with the engine idling. The difference hit me all at once. Light. Even with the gatehouse dark, there were sodium vapor lamps glowing pale orange in the parking lot. I could see the soft wash of camper lights down in the loops, the hard white glare of an RV's outdoor LED strip, the red blink of a radio tower a few miles off. Civilization. Electricity. It looked like a different planet. My shoulders dropped down from around my ears a little. The knot in my gut didn't disappear, but it loosened enough that I could take a real breath. The river noise was gone, replaced by this distant low hum of a dozen different things. Generators, muffled voices, the faint clink of someone washing dishes at a spigot. I killed the engine. The sudden quiet made me swallow hard. I dug a crumpled 20 out of my wallet, filled out the little envelope with my plate number, and one night, stuffed the bill inside and slid it into the metal slot. When I got back in and started the car again, my hands were trembling less. I told myself that was progress. The campground loops were maybe half full. Early spring, cold, damp. Definitely not peak season. But compared to where I'd just come from, it felt like Times Square. Each site that had someone in it was its own tiny glowing island. Lanterns hanging from hooks, the flicker of TVs through RV windows, the warm orange of campfires. I crept through the loop, gravel crunching under my tires, passing a family in camp chairs watching a movie on a laptop, an older couple in matching flannels sitting close together by a fire, some guy in a puffy jacket fiddling with a portable grill. Every time I passed another human, I felt this little jolt of relief. See? The rational part of my brain said, people, just people, no one screaming, no sirens, no weird splashes. You're fine. I picked a site near the bathroom building, mostly because it had the biggest overhead light. The concrete block structure was ugly as hell, but the floodlight over the door was bright and steady, stabbing a clean circle into the wet gravel. I pulled in so my car's nose was pointed right at it. I didn't bother with the little rituals this time. No chair, no fire, no stove. I left most of my shit haphazard in the back. I just climbed into the driver's seat, tilted it back as far as it would go, and sat there for a second, fingers still on the ignition. It felt stupid to lock the doors, with other campers 20 yards away, but I did it anyway. That little click sounded better here, like it meant something again. Outside, someone laughed. A dog barked twice. A kid's voice whined something about hot chocolate. Normal noise, but my body didn't care. Every time someone poured out a pot or kicked over a bucket, my heart jammed itself into my throat until I picked the sound apart and realized it wasn't that splash. It took me a while to work up to killing the headlights. I stared at the bathroom building at that harsh white light and made myself a deal. You turn them off and count to 20. If you freak out, you can turn them back on. No jump. I flicked them off. The campsite dropped into that weird middle brightness, just the overhead park lights and the neighbor's campfire glow. Not dark, not like the road, but the shadows got deeper. I counted. At 13, someone somewhere down the loop dropped something into a plastic tub of water. The hollow slosh made every muscle in my body seize up. I had to start over. I finally made it to 20 and then just kept going until the numbers blurred and I realized I'd been counting for minutes, not seconds. My brain finally got tired of freaking out and let another instinct push through. Exhaustion. You ever been so tired your teeth hurt? That's where I was. All the adrenaline from the river road burned itself out and left this heavy, greasy fatigue sitting on my chest. I kicked off my boots, climbed out of the front seat into the back so I could stretch out and drag my sleeping bag over myself like a shield. The familiar synthetic rustle of it calmed me a little. My car smelled like damp fabric, coffee, and the faint sourness of old gym socks. I cracked the back windows maybe half an inch so I wouldn't wake up with condensation raining on my face, grabbed my hoodie to bunch up as a pillow, and lay there staring at the headliner. It was stained in one corner from some ancient leak. The sounds of the campground filtered in. The murmur of people talking about nothing important, the zip and unzip of a tent, the metallic bang of a bear box. Somewhere fairly close, someone coughed, wet and deep like they'd smoked too long. It all blurred together into a kind of white noise. My eyes kept drooping. Every time they slipped shut, though, they flicked back open, convinced I'd heard water in the wrong place. At some point, I must have actually fallen asleep, because the next thing I remembered didn't make sense. I was standing at the edge of the first campsite again, the one by the river, except it wasn't my fire in front of me. The burned camp chairs were upright and whole. The fabric was this lurid lime green, glowing in the dark. They were occupied. It took me a second to understand what I was looking at. At first, they just looked like people bundled in blankets. Then my eyes adjusted, and I saw that they were wet. Not damp, not misty, dripping. The water came off them in steady streams, pooling at their feet, soaking into the dirt without sound. They were all facing the river. I couldn't see their faces, just the backs of their heads and those slick, dark shapes where their hair should have been. The weird little hornstick circle was between me and them, and it was full to the brim. Velvet black water sat perfectly level with the rim. It didn't ripple, didn't reflect the firelight. It just was. The air smelled like river mud and something else, something sharp and coppery. I knew, the way you know things in dreams, that if I stepped past the circle, if I crossed that line and tried to see the campers' faces, I would hear that splash again. Closer this time, right behind my teeth. I tried to back away. My body wouldn't move. One of the wet figures turned its head in this slow, grinding way, like the motion wasn't built into its neck. I didn't see its face, not really. Just a suggestion of features, smoothed out, like someone had left a clay sculpture in shallow water for too long. "Don't look," it rasped. The voice sounded wrong, like it was coming through a wall, and there was water in it, literally in it, like someone talking with their mouth full and too much in their lungs. The horn sticks around the circle started to lean inward more, the tips dipping toward the surface. For a second, it looked like they were about to touch. I had this insane idea that if they did, something would come out. I snapped awake with my heart slamming so hard I thought it would bruise my ribs. For a second, I didn't know where I was. The dark shape of the car, ceiling pressed down over me. My hands were clenched in the sleeping bag. Someone outside laughed. There was the clang of a pot. The overhead light by the bathroom whined faintly. None of it was river noise. I listened hard. No heavy splashes. No unnatural stillness. Just the late-night campground soundtrack. I swallowed. My throat felt raw, like I'd been yelling. I lay there trying to slow my breathing. The condensation on the windows blurred the outside into smeared streaks of light. My watch said it was a little past 2. Sleep after that came in pieces. 10 minutes here, 20 there. Every time I slipped deep enough, some small noise or phantom splash yanked me back up. At one point, I woke convinced someone was standing right outside the car. I didn't hear them walk up. I just opened my eyes and looked at the fogged window and knew, with every hair on my body, that if I wiped the glass clear, a face would be right there, inches away, looking in. I lay there holding my breath until my chest burnt. The sense of a presence pressed in on me like humidity before a storm. Something scraped very softly along the metal next to my head. Not nails, not claws, just a subtle rasp, like wet fabric dragged across paint. My hand drifted toward the door lock, even though it was already down. Like I thought pushing it harder would help. After a long time, could have been 30 seconds, could have been 10 minutes, the pressure eased. The scraping stopped. It was only in the morning, in the clarity of gray daylight, that I checked that door. There were streaks down the outside panel. Could have been where dirty rainwater had dried weird. Could have been condensation. They ran in these crooked parallel lines from the window seam to the handle. I wiped one with my thumb. It felt gritty like fine sand. I brought my thumb to my nose. Smelled like nothing. Just car. Someone probably brushed against it, I told myself. Kid's jacket. Guy with wet towels. No one had passed that side of the car all night. I'd parked with the driver's side, facing the common area. My brain edited that part back out. I slammed the hatch shut a little too hard and pretended not to notice how fast I was packing. By the time I pulled out of the campground, my head hurt. My eyes felt like sandpaper. The world had that washed out, too bright quality it gets after a sleepless night. The drive back to campus was normal enough that it made me feel crazy. Sunlight actually broke through the heavy clouds in a couple places, smearing pale gold across damp fields. I waited in line behind a minivan at a four-way stop. I passed a guy in a reflective vest picking up litter with one of those grabber sticks. My phone finally found signal again, and notifications started pouring in. Group chat memes. A Canvas alert about updated exam grades. A weather warning for heavy rain in the overnight hours. It felt obscene, like my phone had no business talking about exams and rain when my brain was still back on that gravel road, listening for something huge to hit the water. By the time I pulled into the dorm lot, my whole outdoors guy persona felt like a costume I'd forgotten to take off. My car, usually this little sanctuary, felt contaminated. I sat there for a second with the engine off, staring through the windshield at the brick walls and bike racks, and almost started crying. Not because anything had happened, because nothing had technically, because I'd scare myself so badly with sound. I swallowed it back down, grabbed my bag, and went inside. The fluorescent lights in the lobby buzzed. Someone's door was open down the hall, music playing low. It smelled like burnt popcorn and Axe. I climbed the stairs on autopilot, every muscle aching. My roommate was at his desk when I opened the door, headphones on, clicking through something on his laptop. He spun around when he heard me. "Damn, you look like shit," he said cheerfully, popping one side of the headphones off. "How was your little nature therapy?" I dropped my bag onto my bed. The room felt too small all of a sudden. I sat down on the mattress because my knees were threatening to fold. "Don't say therapy like that," I muttered. He frowned, turned his chair the rest of the way around. "Hey, you good?" I laughed once. It came out brittle. "Yeah, I'm fine." I rubbed my face, trying to figure out how to phrase any of it without sounding like a complete idiot. You know that little Forest Service road I go to, down by the Chattooga? The one I told you not to go to alone? He said. Yeah, ringing a bell. I went, I said. I had weird shit happen. His expression shifted. Less teasing, more alert. Weird how? Like I almost slid off a cliff weird, or locals with shotguns weird. Like I trailed off. Images stacking in my head. The circle of horned sticks, the burned chairs, the black space beyond my headlights, the perfect timing of the splashes. The rules. Like, I heard something, repeatedly, down at the river. He waited. Big splash, I said finally. Like someone throwing a cinder block in. Twice, 30 seconds apart at the first spot. Then again at this other campsite, like a mile away. Same pattern, same timing. I couldn't see anything, but you sure it wasn't just like rocks caving off the bank? He cut in. Twice. I snapped. Same place, same interval, and then again at a totally different part of the road. You know how much heavy shit it takes to sound like that. He opened his mouth, shut it. His eyes slid past me, like he was replaying my words. Maybe it was some asshole fucking with you. He tried after a second. Some guy chucking rocks in the water. In pitch black. I said, on 2 different stretches of river, in perfect timing, without falling in or making any other noise. And he never came up to my campsite, never shown a flashlight, never laughed, just threw shit for an hour while I had a meltdown. He didn't have a good answer. He just sat there, chewing his lip. I told him about the hole, the horn sticks, the burned chairs, how wrong it had felt just stepping out of the car. I left out the dream about the dripping campers. I couldn't bring myself to say that aloud. It felt too fragile, like it would turn into something solid and sharp if I gave it that much detail. When I finished, the room was quiet except for the faint hum of his laptop fan. He leaned back, ran a hand through his hair. Well, he said finally. Fuck, yeah, I said. My mouth twisted. That's kind of where I'm at. He was quiet for a beat, then, you know you probably shouldn't go back there, right? Yeah, I said again. I fucking know. He hesitated. You remember that yellow sheet in the rec center? The Chattooga night notes thing you mocked? My skin went cold. Yeah. How many of those rules did you break? He asked softly. We stared at each other. I could see his reflection, tiny and warped, in the black screen of my turned-off TV. Most of them, I admitted. I camped right on the water first. I built a fire late. I definitely tried to see what I was hearing, even if I didn't see shit. Doors. I did lock the doors. That's the only one I nailed. He exhaled through his nose. Maybe whoever wrote that wasn't as full of shit as we thought. There wasn't really anything else to say. He turned back to his desk after a while, but I could feel him glancing at me now and then like I might fall apart if he looked away too long. I showered. It should have helped. Hot water on sore muscles, the familiar tile walls, the shitty curtain with ducks on it. Instead, every time I closed my eyes under the spray, my brain slapped the image of that river behind my eyelids. I kept expecting the sound of the water hitting the floor to change, deepen, thicken into that heavy, wrong splash. I got out faster than usual, towel half wrapped around my waist, skin goosebumped. There was a puddle forming by the drain that hadn't been there a second ago, just sitting there, perfectly still, refusing to spiral down. I stared at it, heart speeding up, until a guy from down the hall came in, flipped on more lights, and the illusion broke. The puddle was just bathroom grime. I laughed at myself. It sounded a little desperate. For the next couple days, life went on. That's the worst part. The machine doesn't care that your brain is glitching. Professors still assign problem sets. Emails still pile up. People still ask, how was your break? And expect some throwaway story about beer and Netflix. I didn't tell anybody else what happened. Not really. I tried once. 2 days after the trip, I went to return a borrowed stove to the rec center gear desk. The outdoor club president, this girl named Erin who'd been doing trips since before I graduated high school, was there punching something into the checkout system. How was it? She asked without looking up. I saw you reserve the stove. Get her decompression night. I set the stove on the counter. The metal clinked. Not exactly, I said. She glanced up then, taking in my face. That bad. I opened my mouth. The words were right there. Weird shit at the Chattooga Road. Ever hear about that? But something stopped me. A feeling like if I said it in here, under fluorescent lights, with the gym smell coming through the vents, it would stretch the story thin. Make it sound stupid. Rain, I lied instead, shrugging. Firewood sucked. Figured I'd bail rather than huddle in my car all night. She snorted. Fair. That road could be creepy as hell when it's wet. Yeah. I said carefully. What? She made a face, like she was deciding whether to pass on a rumor she didn't really believe. Just weird vibe, she said finally. I've heard people say they get bad feelings camping too close to the river down there. You know how places get reputations. From what? I pressed. She hesitated a beat too long. You ever actually read the Chattooganite sheet on the board? She deflected. Like all the way through? Not just the bold rules. It hadn't even occurred to me that there might be more text. In my head, it was just the bullet list. No, I admitted. What? She shrugged again, but it looked forced. You should. Some old head put a lot of effort into scaring freshmen away from night fishing. Might make you feel better. Or worse. I don't know. She slid the stove into a plastic bin. Conversation over. I walked straight from the gear desk to the bulletin board. The yellow sheet looked smaller than I remembered. Less like a joke and more like, I don't know, a warning label on something radioactive. The top still said, Unofficial Night Camping Notes, Chattooga Corridor. The 5 rules were printed underneath in bold, exactly the way they popped into my head by the fire. Under that, in smaller, plain text, someone had added a paragraph. It was dense enough that my eyes had skipped it before. Compiled from anecdotal reports by club members, 1995 to 2018, it started. Use at your own risk. Patterns observed during incidents of bad nights include repeated heavy splashes near river-adjacent campsites despite no visible cause, sudden onset of intense anxiety in otherwise experienced campers, localized silences. Note: reports are typically triggered by a second splash within 1 minute of the first. In all recorded cases where the subject broke camp and left the area immediately, no further escalation occurred. In cases where subjects remained and attempted to investigate, details become inconsistent/incomplete. See Incident Reports 030711. Someone had underlined, left the area immediately in blue pen, hard enough to dent the paper. At the very bottom, in handwriting crammed into the margin, someone had added, if you're reading this and thinking it's just a river, good. Keep thinking that. Just don't go looking for the rock. My stomach did this slow roll that had nothing to do with the cafeteria food. It felt like the words were aimed right at me, like they'd been waiting there the whole time for me to earn them. I looked for the incident reports mentioned in parentheses. Nothing was posted nearby. No folder. No QR code. Just the shit about rafting signups and the doodle of Bigfoot someone had penciled in the corner. On impulse, I still don't know why, I pulled my phone out and snapped a picture of the sheet. The flash went off by accident, making me wince. For a second, the paper was lit up too bright, every wrinkle and thumbprint visible. In the photo, the yellow looked almost white. The ink bled around the edges of the letters, like they were still wet. That night, when I zoomed in on the picture in my dorm, I noticed something else. Down at the bottom edge, where the paper had wrinkled from humidity, there were faint watermarks. Pale crescent shapes, overlapping like something had dripped and then dried. They weren't obvious. You had to squint. Probably just leaky ceiling. Old gym building. I know that's the logical answer. Doesn't change how my skin crawled when I saw them. I did try to look up the incident reports. Online, we've got this old club Google Drive with trip logs and gear inventories. I searched Chattooga, night splash. A couple benign results came up. Sign-ups, a slideshow from some rafting weekend with people in helmets grinning at the camera. No, incident 03. No 07. No 11. I emailed the club's generic address anyway, feeling dumb as I typed. This is my name. From campus, I was wondering if there's any info on the bad nights down by the Chattooga corridor mentioned on the night notes sheet in the rec center. Curious after a weird experience the other night. I got a reply from an address I didn't recognize a day later. Hey, it said, we try not to circulate the old reports because they're all hearsay and half bullshit, and we don't want people treating them like a challenge. If you had a weird night and left, you did the right thing. You don't owe the river anything. Don't go back there alone at night, and you'll be fine. It was signed E, which I assumed was Erin. There was a sent from my phone tag underneath, like she dashed it off between errands. I started to type a reply. Can you at least tell me what happened in 03? My fingers hovered over the keyboard. The cursor blinked. After a minute, I closed the email without sending anything. The thing is, knowing more wouldn't have changed what had already happened. I kept telling myself that. Nights got harder. I started noticing water. Not in some mystical, the universe is speaking way. Just more. The way your brain filters things after something bad. A truck going through a puddle on the street outside my window made me jerk upright in bed. Someone dropping a bucket in the custodial closet down the hall made me flinch. One Thursday, it poured all day. Classic Appalachian spring storm, sheets of gray, gutters overflowing. I sat in a lecture hall with 100 other people and listened to the rain hammer on the roof. Every few minutes, a particularly heavy surge would hit, this deeper wham of water. Each one pushed a spike of adrenaline into my veins. My notes from that day are useless. Just a bunch of half-finished sentences, and at the bottom of the page, a little circle drawn over and over. Horn-shaped lines around it. I don't remember drawing it. I started avoiding the creek that runs behind campus. I used to go there all the time, cutting through on my way to the library, but now the idea of being that close to moving water with no one else around made my palms sweat. I took longer routes on sidewalks just to stay close to buildings. One night, close to midnight, I found myself standing in front of the dorm bathroom sink, staring at the faucet. It had a slow drip. It always had. The maintenance tickets about it were a whole meme on our floor. Drip, drip, drip. The pool it made in the basin was shallow and clear. I watched each drop fall, little circles, gentle ripples. Then one drop came down heavier. When it hit, the sound was a fraction deeper. Not the full impact, not anything dramatic, just enough that my body went cold. My eyes snapped up to the mirror. For half a heartbeat, I swore I saw someone standing in the shower stall behind me. Tall, too tall, shoulders almost to the curtain rod. A suggestion of a head bent slightly to one side, like it was trying to see past the curtain edge. Then my roommate came in, pushing the door with his foot, scrolling through his phone. Dude, he said, why are you staring at the sink like you're about to propose to it? I blinked. The stall was empty. Curtain half open, the way it always was. No footprints, just my stupid reflection, pale and wide-eyed. Nothing, I muttered. Just thinking. He snorted. Think quieter, freak. Some of us are trying to pretend we don't have midterms. I laughed, because it was easier than trying to explain. The hornstick circle started showing up in my dreams more after that. Sometimes it was in the woods. Sometimes it was at the edge of the campus fountain. Once it was right in the middle of my dorm room floor, the carpet around it soaked and sagging. Always the same, perfectly round, water black and still, little whittled horns leaning in. Always that feeling that if they ever touched, I'd hear that splash from inside my own skull. I try not to think about what it was supposed to be. A marker? A container? A threshold? Part of my brain, the part that loves systems and patterns and tidy explanations, wanted to make something out of it. A story about some old mountain spirit pissed that kids were pissing in its river. Something with rules I could follow. Another part, the one that had counted out those 30 seconds in the dark, wanted nothing to do with it. That part hissed, stop naming it. Don't give it shapes. You got away. Don't turn around. So I didn't go back to the Chattooga Road. Not at night. For a while, that was enough. The memory stayed in its box, mostly. I only took it out when I couldn't help it, turning it over in my hands like a weird rock you found, and aren't sure if it's actually a fossil. Then, a few weeks later, I broke my own rule. It was a stupid reason. A girl, obviously. There's always a girl in these stories, even when she's not the point. Her name's not important. We were lab partners. She liked hiking. We got coffee a couple times, traded trail wrecks, followed each other on Instagram. One afternoon she mentioned, offhand, that she'd never actually seen the Chattooga up close, just pictures from rafting brochures. "It's so pretty," she said. "Like stupid pretty. I want to see it in person." My mouth opened and said, "I know a spot," before my brain could catch up. Her eyes lit up. "You do? Like a secret local spot?" "Kind of," I said. The words tasted like pennies. "There's this old forest road. Ends at a little pull-off right by the water. It's nice. In the daytime. You can go right down to the rocks." She grinned. "Dude, take me. I want to go this weekend." Every sensible thought in my head shouted at once. Say no. Say you're busy. Say the road's washed out. Tell her you hate that place now. Tell her about the splashes and the rules and the way your lungs try to climb out of your body. Yeah, I heard myself say, "We can go." I told myself it'd be good. Exposure therapy. Go in daylight. Prove to your idiot lizard brain that it's just a river and some dumb trash left by rednecks. See the burned chairs in sunlight. Laugh at how dramatic you were being. We drove out on a bright Saturday, late morning. The sky was this brittle blue, no clouds. The rain earlier in the week hadn't been enough to flood anything, just make everything extra green. It was different with someone else in the car. She talked most of the way, filling the space with stories from her hometown, shit about her roommate, a rant about her statistics professor. I laughed in the right places. My hands still tightened on the wheel when we crested that ridge and left the last house behind. The road down to the river looked smaller in the daylight. Less like a tunnel, more like just a gravel road. Potholes, ruts, sunlight flickering through the branches. She rolled the window down and stuck her hand out, fingers slicing the wind. "It smells amazing," she said. "Oh my God, we don't get this where I'm from. Just cow shit and highway exhaust." I forced a smile. We passed the little trailhead lot with the bulletin board. The yellow sheet was still there behind the plexiglass, edges curling. She didn't notice. My eyes snagged on it, darted away. By the time we reached the first camping pull-off, my palms were damp against the wheel. "Is this it?" she asked, leaning forward. "First one," I said. "There's another spot at the end that's nicer." I pulled in anyway. I had to see it. Had to know if it looked different in day. The burned chair frames were still there, black metal twisted in the fire pit. The melted nylon had hardened into grotesque drips along the legs. The weird circular hole was there too, except it wasn't just a hole anymore. Rain had filled it. The water sat perfectly level with the rim, dark and still. The horn-shaped sticks around it had swollen from the damp, but they were all still in place, angled inward. The hair on my arm stood up. "People just leave shit everywhere," she said, wrinkling her nose at the trash. "I'll never understand it." She stepped toward the circle, squinting. "What's this? Some Blair Witch crap." "Don't," I heard myself say sharply. She blinked, looked back at me. "Don't what?" "Don't kick it," I said lamely. "Some people do. Rituals up here. Or whatever. I don't want to touch anyone's thing." Smooth. Real, articulate. She snorted. "Do you believe in that stuff?" "No, primelit. I just don't want to piss off the kind of weirdo who hikes out to build it." She shrugged and backed away. "Fair." I made myself walk around a little. The path down to the river was steeper than I remembered, but manageable. We went down together, sliding on damp leaves, grabbing saplings for balance. The river itself was stupidly pretty, just like she'd said. Clear water over rounded stones, sunlight flashing on little riffles, deep green pools along the far bank. It looked harmless, friendly even, the kind of place you'd sit all afternoon with your feet in the water and a cheap paperback. Standing there, the memory of that night didn't overlay perfectly. The water level was a little lower. The angle of the light was different, but I could still point to the exact spot the sound had come from. A bend where the current deepened, swirling under some overhanging roots. She stepped closer to the edge, looking down. "Careful," I said. She glanced back at me, eyebrow raised. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said. My voice came out too tight. "It's just slick." We stayed maybe 15 minutes. Long enough for her to take some photos, for me to fake a few smiles, for my heart to slow down from hummingbird speed to merely caffeinated. We didn't hear any splashes. No weird silences. A crow flew overhead and yelled at us. A fish jumped once, a neat little flick. Normal river stuff. When we climbed back up and got in the car, I realized I'd been holding my breath the whole time we were down there. "You gonna show me the spot at the end?" she asked, buckling her seatbelt. "Nah," I said. The word surprised me with how firm it was. "Road gets kind of sketchy past here. I don't want to have to dig this thing out of a mud hole." She rolled her eyes, but she didn't argue. The tires crunched back onto the gravel. The circle of horn sticks shrank in the rear view and disappeared. On the way back to campus, she posted a photo of the river to her story. I watched someone reply, "Yo, that's the Chattooga, right? You guys are insane. That place is haunted as shit." She laughed and showed me. "Look at this idiot. Haunted as shit." I forced a chuckle. People will say anything for clout. My thumbs hovered over my phone later. Wanted to message that person. Ask them what they heard. I didn't. There's this line between curiosity and invitation, and I'm terrified of stepping over it. So here's what I know, and it's not much. Something lives in that river, or along it, or under it, or where the river brushes up against whatever comes next. I don't care which version you pick. It doesn't matter. It's big enough to move water in a way that doesn't read like rocks or logs or normal shit falling. It's precise enough to hit the same rhythm more than once. It's aware enough to do it where and when people are close enough to hear. It has rules, or at least there are rules that have worked so far for people who brush up against it. Don't camp right on the water. If you hear one big splash, fine, whatever, blame the river. If you hear a second, within a minute from the same spot, get out. Don't try to see it. Don't sit there in the dark with your little fire like a fucking beacon and wait for the third beat. Lock your doors. Those rules sound stupid in the daytime. They really do. Sitting here under regular lights, looking at my own hands, they sound like superstition. Like the kind of list a board senior would make to haze newbies. At night, at the edge of that road, they're the only thing between you and, I don't know, something that doesn't care what your GPA is. Sometimes I think about the people from the incident reports, the ones who didn't leave, the ones whose details got inconsistent/incomplete. That phrase haunts me. It's such a bureaucratic way to say something broke the narrative. I wonder what they did. Did they walk down to the water with their headlamps? Did they shine their beams around and joke about Nessie until something long and pale rolled just out of sight? Did they hear a third splash? I don't let myself dwell on it too long. That way lies sleeplessness and paranoia and taking every weird drip in the bathroom as a sign. I stopped going to the Chattooga after that day with the girl. Even in daylight, there are other trails, other rivers, other mountains. The Appalachians are big. I don't need that particular stretch. I still camp. I still hike. I still sleep in my car, sometimes when I'm too lazy to pitch the tent. But I pay attention now in a way I didn't before. I don't camp right next to running water anymore. I watch for signs, the trash, the symbols, the way the woods feel when you step out of the car. If my stomach knots for no good reason, I don't tell it to man up. I listen. And when I'm lying in my sleeping bag, half asleep, and I hear something heavy hit a lake or a river in the wrong way, in the wrong rhythm, I don't wait for a second one. I pack my shit and leave. I haven't heard that exact splash again. Not really. I've heard things that made me think about it, but none of them lined up with that cold, mechanical precision. What I do hear, more often than I'd like to admit, is phantom echoes of it. In dreams. In the space between sleep and waking. In the sound of someone dropping a full mop bucket 3 floors down. Sometimes I'll be walking across campus late, headphones on, rain starting to spit, and I'll veer away from the decorative fountain without thinking. I'll circle it wide, watching the surface out of the corner of my eye. Just in case. You can tell me it was all in my head. That I was anxious and underslept and primed by local urban legends and a dumb rule sheet. You can build me a rational ladder out of physics and psychology, and I will nod along to every rung. But there was that moment in the car, in the dark, watching the seconds click toward 30, when something in the world and something in me lined up too perfectly for coincidence. Whoever wrote those rules did it because they or someone they loved heard that same sequence and realized too late that it wasn't just rocks. I gotta leave. I gotta drive away and sleep in a parking lot under a floodlight. And the worst thing that touched me was some residual fear and maybe something wet brushing the car door. So I'm telling you this the way I wish someone had told me. Not as a ghost story, not as content, not as some campfire thrill to pass the time. As a procedure, if you go out there, and you will, because people always do, because the river is pretty and the forest is deep and we're all idiots. Remember this much. You don't know it curiosity. You don't know it your bravery. You don't have to be the guy who looks over the edge to prove nothing's there. You hear one splash and it rattles you? Fine. Blame a fish. Blame a rock. Blame your nerves. You hear the second, same place, same weight, inside a minute? Go. Don't argue with yourself. Don't sit there trying to logic it into something harmless. Don't wait for it to give you a sign that's big enough to count. It already did. And if you're the kind of person who looks at a list of rules on a faded sheet of paper and laughs, who thinks, what's the worst that could happen, and goes looking for the rock, I hope you're right. I really, really hope you are. Because if you're not, there's a place on some dusty drive, buried under bad formatting and old incident numbers, that's waiting to turn your story into one more incomplete detail. As for me, I'm done trying to fill in the blanks. I'm not going back down that road at night. I won't stand by that fire ring again, waiting for the darkness to answer. I got my answer the first time. It sounded like water hitting water, and that was more than enough.